To make these beautiful doll dresses, I am absolutely not going to be showing you gimmicks like chopping up balloons or using glue, because those techniques, they just don't work. You'd end up with something that looked bad, didn't fit, and didn't last. We're going to be using good old-fashioned sewing techniques. But please don't be scared by the word sewing. This dress is genuinely super simple, one of the easiest things you'll ever make, and it looks amazing. The first thing you're going to need is fabric, and for this dress, to make something nice and simple, fabrics that stretch. The more stretch, the better. If you're not sure exactly what to try, finding an old t-shirt and cutting up is a great place to start. All you need in terms of equipment is normal things we would sew with. So you can use a needle and thread if you prefer hand sewing, or you can use a machine if you have one. You're also going to need some pins and some scissors. As well as that, you will need a bit of paper. We're going to be making a pattern and you'll need something to write with. Pen or a pencil is fine. Once you have chosen which doll you're going to do, make sure to remove her clothes. We're going to make the pattern from the base of the doll herself. I'm using the dolls that you can see in front of you. I've got a Rainbow High doll, I've got a Tonna Tyler, a Barbie, and a Monster High. To draw the pattern, all you need to do is lie the doll alongside of the edge of the paper. If she has a pretty curvy body, then just lay her at a little bit of an angle to make her as close to the side as possible at all points. Then you're going to draw around her. Leave about 1/2 centimeter space between the doll and the pencil when you make your mark. That's going to be the space of the seam that we will be sewing. And you can draw the line around the doll from underneath the armpit right down to the bottom of her feet. I'm going to draw the line just under her foot, leaving about 1 centimeter longer than I actually want the dress to be, because that's going to be our hem. I'll do exactly the same thing at the top. I'm going to draw roughly her bust line, and I'm going to leave an extra centimeter so that that can be our hemline. If we're using a different doll, we're going to do exactly the same thing. It really doesn't matter what doll we're using. We just shape it to that doll's body and that doll's size. If you want a short dress, just think about the length that you want and draw a straight line across there. Again, make sure to add an extra centimeter to allow for the hem that we're going to be sewing. Once your pattern is drawn, we're going to prepare that pattern and attach it to the fabric to make sure that the fabric piece we cut is exactly the same. So cut out around the line that you've made for your pattern, and then we're going to prepare our fabric. Now this is a stretch fabric and we have to make sure that the dress is being cut in the correct direction of the stretch. So just pull it with your hands, and whichever way it is the most stretchy is going to be the horizontal or side to side direction of the dress, because that's going to stretch around her body. If you are using a fabric with fur, then you're also going to run your hand across that fabric and check which direction the fur goes. Then just going to fold that fabric in half along that horizontal direction and make a nice flat line. We're going to pin the side of our dress there. So you can go ahead and place your pattern on top of that and then start pinning it so that the line really sits accurately on that fold. Once it's pinned in place, all you need to do is cut out exactly around that line. Don't worry if it's a little bit rough, because you're going to be sewing. We're not going to see any of your cut lines. To make sure the dress looks really nice when it's finished, it's going to have a top hem and a bottom hem. We're going to do both of those before we do the back seam. Make sure you've got your pins ready. We're going to fold down the top of the dress just about 1 centimeter, and we're going to pin it at intervals. Roughly 3 to 5 centimeters is fine, but honestly, you do not need to measure. Just get those pins in nicely, and then we're going to start sewing. It's really important when you're sewing your hem to make sure you think about the fact that your fabric is stretchy. If you sew a straight line, well, that thread is not going to be stretchy, and it's just going to break when you put it on the doll. So you need the style of stitching that you do to have a bit of give in it. And the best way to do this is to do an up and down stitch or a zigzag stitch. And that way, when you pull it, you're still going to have some stretch. You can go ahead and knot your thread, and then you can move along the length of the fabric, taking out the pins as you get to them. and then knotting your thread at the other end when the whole hem is done. If you prefer sewing yours on a machine, which I absolutely do, the same thing is true of the hem. You need to use a zigzag stitch on your machine. Otherwise, your thread is just not going to be durable and it's not going to have any give in it. So make sure that you are zigzagging both hems. If you're using zigzag stitch on your sewing machine, just make sure to knot the thread well at the start and end, because zigzag doesn't usually have an auto knot method. So I sew back and forth a couple of times to make sure it is knotted. Then going to sew the whole length of the garment, resting close to the edge of the seam. If you prefer to take the pins out as you sew, then that's great. But generally, a sewing machine is capable of sewing directly over pins. You can go ahead and do the bottom hem of the dress in exactly the same way you did the top hem. If you were hand sewing, then you're going to repeat that process. The seam is probably going to be a bit longer, so it will take some time. If you did it on the machine, then again, use your zigzag stitch to do a second hem down the bottom. Once your hemlines are finished, then all you need to do is sew the back of the dress. We're going to fold the dress in half with the outside, the bit that you'll see when the doll is wearing it, folded into the inside. That way we won't see the seam when you sew it. Try to pin it neatly, keeping the top and bottom in line before you start sewing. Now, because your dress doesn't need to stretch in this direction, it's totally fine to use a straight stitch this time, and that can be quite a bit quicker. So again, if you're hand sewing, this time we can just do a straight line, or we can use a back stitch to give it a little bit more strength. If you're sewing on a machine, you can do a straight stitch with a little knot at the start and end. And that is literally everything to sew your dress. You just need to turn it the right side out now. And if you want to add any decorations or details, you're going to be able to do that. There are also loads of different ways that you can customize the dress as you make it. One that I tried was making the dress a little bit longer than I needed and then doing a gather to give it a fun ruching effect. You could also make sleeves for your dress, which you can do in exactly the same way you made the dress. It's just that this time you're going to use the doll's arms as the pattern. The sleeves don't have to be attached, they can just slide on separately. This fun dress is restricted only by your imagination. You can choose different fabrics, different decorations, different styles to make this dress any way you want. So I did a double layer white and lace dress to give it a bridal appearance, which I finished with some jewelry and a bouquet to really make this girl look like a beautiful bride. Adding drooping sleeves and a patterned belt makes this dress really look like a medieval gown. Choosing a fabric like classic black and a short, neat fitting creates the perfect little black dress for any doll. A lightweight fur and an all-over ruching makes this dress look really stylish on a rainbow high doll. Using glittery fabric and adding a belt makes this have a magical look on a monster high doll and really fits with her color scheme. So many different possibilities with one incredibly simple pattern. If you make something cool, please leave it in your comments of this video. And make sure to subscribe to my channel for more fun tutorials to come.